And now, The Allan Handelman Show.
Welcome back. Good to have you here. This is always fascinating to explore. Daniel Estulin is with us live from Spain, talking about his new book, Shadow Masters. We're taking your calls now and your questions at 866-482-1011. And let's start with John. Let's go to John. John, line 1.
Yes.
All right, you're on the air. Go ahead. What's your question? Daniel can hear you.
Daniel, you sound like a commentator named Bob Chapman, and I want to know if you agree with this. He says, and I think you also agree, that this global economic collapse was brought on and engineered and planned by this group of people that you call the Bilderbergers, and that their plan in doing that was to destroy the currencies of the Western world so that we'd replace them with a single currency and a one world government.
All right, John, we'll get your answer on the air.
I don't know who Bob Chapman is because I live in Spain and I don't listen to American radio simply because we don't, have it in Spain. But I certainly agree with the first part of what he says or what you said. I don't necessarily agree with the second. As I said before in the beginning, it's not about one world government. It's not about New World Order. It's about one world company limited. Now, as far as the, destroying the world economy, absolutely so. About 10 or 12 years ago, I don't remember exactly the date, one of the Bilderberg attendees, we have several of them who are, key sources in the Bilderberg inner circle, he had passed me one of the Bilderberg reports. And in that report, it said, black on white, demand destruction. Now, I didn't understand the phrase at the time. About 6 years later, a friend of mine, a very important man at the time in the World Bank, who was also a key member of the Bilderberger elite, who was working for us, on our behalf from within Bilderberger Group. I said to him, what does it mean, demand destruction? He said, well, how do you destroy demand? I kind of looked at him and I said, well, wars. He said, no, wars are very, very expensive. I said, well, all right, well, how? He said, you destroy the demand by destroying the world economy. I opened my mouth. He kind of lifted his hand up to preempting my question. And he said to me, in jest, he said, if you're worried about David Rockefeller, losing his monies and living under a bridge, don't. I kind of smiled rightly at him. He said, it's just like the Great Depression, which really wasn't the Great Depression at all. It was simply a transfer of wealth. We, the people, lost our homes, our monies, our equities, everything we had. And then someone came along and literally had bought everything up for pennies on the dollar. Now, another very important point about money.
Sure.
You see, people like Bilderberg societies, they want an empire. And too many people believe that in order to have an empire, we need money. But money is not a determinant of wealth and the economy because money has no intrinsic value. Money doesn't affect the development of the planet. Human mind affects the development of the planet. This is how mankind is measured. And what separates us from animals and from lower-life species is our ability to discover universal physical principles of nature. It allows us to innovate, which subsequently improves the lives of people, and that makes a difference between us and them. And that's one of the objectives of the Bilderbergers and other organizations and societies like them. The idea is to keep us dumbed down, to destroy the creative the creative powers of reason, to suppress it. It's about zero growth. It's about zero progress. It's about Club of Rome's Limits to Growth white paper. It's about Project 1980s, the CFR report. CFR, of course, is the Bilderberger American cousin, promoting controlled destruction of the world economy. Because, again, all of these people understand what circles around Leibniz, the man who created calculus, understood many, many, many years ago, that development and progress is directly proportional to population density. So if you can destroy the economy, you can destroy progress, you can destroy science and development, you can destroy mankind because they don't need 6.7 billion of us on the planet. We, to them, are the great unwashed, and they just need enough of us to work the fields and our children to work the fields, just as we did 650 years ago before the greatest creation of modern age, which is the creation of nation-state republics that has given us constitutions, natural law, social welfare, general welfare. And again, it takes us, to an intellectually higher plateau because the question is, why are we here? What is the responsibility of governments to its people? What is the meaning of immortality? And the meaning of immortality isn't about a man living on the planet doing good and then his soul going to heaven. It's about creating a society that leaves something better for future generations. It's about propagating the human race. And that's what the fight is about between us and the Shadow Masters. They need to destroy the human race.
Now,
and we need to do our utmost to preserve it.
And the amount of power, now if I'm confused, if I bring up the Bilderbergers and I'm going back to your last book, forgive me, because I know the Shadow Masters is a little bit different. It's a continuation. But they have so much power that they could make or contact the president and get something changed. That's how powerful they are, even President Obama.
Well, Obama, no president in the United States, especially in the 20th century, with the exception of JFK and Delano Roosevelt, every other president, is beholden to the Bilderbergers. Barack Obama attended Bilderberg 2008 in Chantilly. They wouldn't have allowed him anywhere near the White House had he not been, bought and sold, long before he became president of the United States. And at that meeting in 2008, and again, I reported it immediately, the day that he met on Thursday, or the first day of the meeting, I said that the American Bilderbergers told Barack Obama that if he does what he's supposed to, the presidency was his to lose. If he kisses the right baby, smiles the right amount of times, does the right things, and says the right platitudes, he's going to be the president. And they also told Hillary Clinton, who also attended Bilderberg 2008, to stay out of his way or else. And this is exactly what had happened. So obviously, again, the presidents of the United States, prime ministers of Canada, other leaders of international community, they're just figureheads. It's the people behind them, the Shadow Masters, who actually rule the world from behind the scenes. And that's one of the things I talk about and show and delve into and explain in my new book.
What's interesting is to think, President Bush would be going to the same meeting and cooperating with Obama in the same group and the same people. It just sounds so surreal,
Well, they don't represent the interests of the United States. Just the synarchy movement of empires, they never worked for their national interests. All these people represent pan-international interests. Anybody who attends Bilderberg meeting or any other organization like Bilderberg meetings, be it Trilateral Commission or Council on Foreign Relations, all of them are pan-world enthusiasts whose idea is obviously to destroy the United States of America as a constitutional republic. And until the United States is out of the way, until Russia is a nuclear power out of the way, they won't have their one world company limited. But I can tell you one thing. David Rockefeller is going to be long dead and buried, and they still won't be any closer to getting to their, end goal.
866-482-1011. 866-482-1011 is our number. By the way, his last book, The True Story of the Bilderberger Group, currently is being made into a $100 million motion picture by Halcyon. An explosive look at the... and you were one of the few people, from what I remember, you were one of the few people, I don't want to use the word infiltrate, but you actually got inside the Bilderberger Group.
Well, got inside, photographed, took pictures, and got out. And I was also the only person in the world who infiltrated the G20 meeting back in November of 2009 in St. Andrews, actually the site of Bilderberger meeting back in 1998. I infiltrated the G20 meeting and had stolen the official documents and papers written by the attendees themselves, and had posted on my website, another website, bilderbergbook.com. And of course, I was the only person actually who got in and got to speak to Victor Boot in prison. He's in Klong Prem. They call it the Bangkok Hilton, the most dangerous prison in all of Southeast Asia. A man who was guarded 24 hours around the clock, just like Carlos the Jackal and Osama bin Laden had he been caught. Well, I got in, and I interviewed him many times without anybody realizing that I was there. So, yes, I have a few medals I could hang on my chest.
Wow. Okay. It's interesting the way people describe you. I've read that they say you're what's the word? Tenacious, courageous, possessed, obsessed. When you have your mind on getting a story and getting behind the scenes, you're pretty aggressive. We don't see investigative reporting around the world like that, and people taking risks like you're taking. So it's interesting what motivates you.
Most investigative reporters, they work for a corporation. They have a parking spot, they have a locker, they have a membership to a gym that is paid for by CBS, ABC, or whoever. And they don't want to lose these perks. Plus, they get free lunches. I don't have any of these things because freedom is a very precious thing, and I'm willing to sacrifice my life if need to, just to make sure that future generations live in a better world, which is why I'm tenacious. I'm simply not afraid.
Let's get into, we'll go to the call shortly, 866-482-1011 for your questions, comments, and anything you want to know about this. Now, in leading up to the program, we were talking about how these international drug smugglers and terrorists are cooperating with governments, including ours, and that's what I'd like you to talk about. How do drugs, why are drugs something that our country would want to get into, or our government would want to be involved in?
You and I are on the same wavelength, because I was thinking to myself, I hope he asks me about, the actual drug trade. What do international terrorism, the world's financial markets, empire building, and capitalism have in common? Their utter dependence on drug profits for their very existence. Now, drugs, the war on drugs is a sham. It has always been a sham, and for as long as there's money to be made, it will continue to be a sham, while our political classes pay lip service to the danger of substance abuse with easy-to-remember slogans such as "Just say no to drugs." Now, drug money, that's a $700 billion in cash annual profits. It's not a lot. That's too much money to hide in a sock. Now, drug money, it moves so quickly from point A to point B that unless you have the computer program itself that watches it and you're at that very moment watching the transactions, you can't possibly see it. And in the world markets where you apply money is when you control business. You control markets. You control banks. You control interest rates. Drug money flows faster. Money that is not criminal money has to go through regulations and banking systems. It has to go through taxation. It is tracked. Lawyers follow it. IRS follow it. CIA follows it. That money moves like molasses, which is why, again, the drug money economy is such a key element of the world financial system. Now, another thing is that corporations trading on Wall Street all have stock values that are based upon annual net profits. Shares of stocks are fractions of ownership in companies, and they represent equity. They're known as price to earnings. Now, in any corporation that is healthy, this ratio is about 15 or 30 to 1. If you take it as a strictly mathematical relationship, by adding just $1 to the company's year-end results, you would create $30 in stock value. So like 30 to 1 is the same as 60 to 2, 93, or 120 to 4. So if you're a corporation such as Citibank, one of the leading drug laundering banks in the world, or Bank of Hong Kong and Shanghai, which is the number one leading drug money laundering bank in the world, and you have an additional $10 million in net profits based upon the drug trade, the net increase in their company's stock value could be as much as $300 million. If that additional net profit is $20 million, that's $600 million in their company's stock value, which is why no matter how hard you try, you could never eradicate drugs, because if you ever legalized drugs or eliminated drugs, the entire world economy would collapse onto itself. And I remind you, as an example, Afghanistan. When the Taliban first came into power back in 1996, the very first thing they did, they eliminated the entire crop of Annapolis. And literally overnight, they wiped out $40 billion in cash, running itself through washing itself through the world financial systems. 8 months later, which is the time it takes for that drug money to actually wash itself through the financial system, if you remember in 1997, we had the Asian tigers all going bust one after another.
Right.
We had a shortage of liquidity in the system.
Mm-hmm.
Well, today, over 90% of Afghanistan is in the hands of the NATO alliance. Yet the drug trade and the drug profits and the drug crop is bigger than ever. There's a correlation between these two things. And if people don't understand that, as we say in Russian, they're not on very friendly terms with their brains.
866-482-1011. Daniel Estulin, his latest book, Shadow Masters. Let's go to line one. Jacob, good to have you on. Jacob, what's your question?
Good. All right. Question for you, man. How dangerous are these shadow groups to somebody or someone who poses a serious threat to their power structure? Say, just going out on a limb, like someone envelops a technology where we can get rid of our dependency on oil, and all of a sudden we can go pure electric. How dangerous? Would they be suppressed, or
interesting?
What attack vectors would they take to suppress them?
Well, the first thing they'll do is, if all else fails, they'll just kill you, which is why I'm very, very careful, where I go, who I talk to, the kinds of contacts I make. And also I do have, personal protection. I don't mean bodyguards because you don't really need them. They killed JFK. They certainly can get rid of me. But the point is that you do need to have a sixth sense. And, I'm a very light sleeper, and I'm very light on the move. So my personal security is obviously a very important element. But also, when you get enough people on your side, when you have enough countries listening and paying attention to what you're saying, you suddenly become a very uncomfortable witness, and they try to destroy your credibility, which is what they always try to do first, because it's the easiest thing to do. But if you are incorruptible, it makes it harder for them to do that. So again, they come up with different scenarios, such as, putting into your mouth things that you never said, or getting American journalists writing things about you that are simply not true. And, unfortunately, we've been hypnotized by this funny little thing called the television set, because most of us, have been, taught to believe that what comes on the nightly news, be it ABC, CBS, or whatever, or Fox, or it comes on the front page of the New York Times or the Washington Post of this world, has to be the truth. And people will laugh in your face when you tell them that there is another reality beyond the two-dimensionality of the front page of the New York Times, because they will tell you, if what you're saying about the American government and the CIA, working the drug trade, well, why is it on the front page of the New York Times? Because, again, the New York Times and company, they're part of the world elite. They're part of the Bilderberg group. Their stocks are traded on the stock exchange.
Well, the New York Times is they actually a part of the Bilderberg group?
The New York Times, the Washington Post, Donald Graham, Catherine Graham, his mother, they're members of the Bilderberger Inner Circle, Wall Street Journal. You're talking about Time Magazine, Newsweek, ABC, CBS, NBC. For all of them are members of the Bilderberger Inner Le Monde from France, El País from Spain. All of the key media groups are there, and they're all sworn to secrecy, which is why if you actually go to New York Times and try to Google on their site Bilderberg, you might find an article or two. It's going to be benign and certainly not going to tell you anything of what I'm telling you right now or what's in my book.
Jacob, what do you think of this as you're listening?
Well, I do have another, not necessarily a question, but more of a comment. It seems like the root cause of all this is greed, and, you talk about the one world, or not one world, but you want to talk about this gigantic mega globalization corporation. Well, all this is based on a monetary system, and you think in this day and age, as a society and as a civilization, we should transgress past the monetary system. I don't know if you're familiar with the Zeitgeist movement or the Venus Project, and they're a group that basically advocates a resource-based economy. We have the technology to, basically, we have money and we have all this stuff, and if people want to buy something and they can't afford it, they can't. We have grocery stores filled with all this food while we have people starving on the streets, and that's that structure, that's that power structure that keeps it that way. Well, if we went to a resource-based economy and got rid of this barter and trade system, would that be beneficial? Would that even be a feasible system? Would that be sustainable, or is that just so far-fetched out there just because it would eliminate the power structure? I mean, how would you advocate something like that, without sounding like a crazy, push that to politicians?
You just said it. You advocated it beautifully, and you certainly don't sound crazy. Unfortunately, you're a humanist, and the people who run Bilderberg are degenerates. Their idea is not to share. When David Rockefeller and company talk about sharing, people get a wrong notion of sharing. It's not that, they feel like he's going to share his wealth with us. It's that he is going to share your wealth with him, which is not exactly the same thing. So needless to say, again, their idea of what the world should be like, should look like, has very little to do with how we, the people of the world, the 6.7 billion of us, actually imagine the world. And that, unfortunately, is the problem. But yes, you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, there's very little can be done, amicably.
All right. Well, Jacob, thank you for the call. We're just about out of time here. Good question. I appreciate it. This is something I got to tell you, every time we have him on, we get lots of email and calls that go for days and days and days. So if you missed any part of the show, We'll have a complete podcast of the interview, as the entire show will be up there, basically. What can I say? This is an amazing book. The reviews are incredible. Shadow Masters. And let me give you his website again. It's DanielEstulin.com. ESTULIN.com. Stay brave. Keep up the good work. I don't know where you get your motivation and, guts to risk your life like you do, but keep up the good investigative work.
Thank you so much, sir. It's wonderful to be on your show again.
Stay tuned for more of the Allan Handelman Show.
This guy is going to change lives.
Compelling talk radio.
I'm a very bad man. I don't use a knife, a gun, or a crowbar. I don't even need to leave my computer, but I could steal your retirement, the equity in your home, even the money in your bank accounts. And you may not even know it till I'm long gone. Think you can stop me?
Identity theft has become one of the biggest criminal activities in the world, and fighting it on your own is nearly impossible. You need LifeLock, the only company whose sole mission is protecting our members' identities. At LifeLock, we believe you have the right to live free from the fear of identity theft. So we offer the most comprehensive identity theft protection available. Try LifeLock service risk-free for 60 days. If you're not convinced, simply cancel within 60 days of enrollment for a full refund. This offer of 60 days risk-free is too important to pass up, so call now. 1-800-984-1447, promo code COVER. 1-800-984-1447-COVER. See lifelock.com for details.
Attention taxpayers, if you've received a notice from the IRS or state, do not ignore it. It's also a big mistake to try and handle your tax problem on your own. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, it's a fact the government has the power to take everything you own, including your home, business, wages, savings, and your freedom. But here's the good news. There are new programs that are geared to help you dramatically settle, reduce, or eliminate what you owe. But you have to call now. Take down this number or put it in your cell phone, but call 866-577-4676. 866-577-4676. When you call, you'll get free information on how you can reduce or eliminate back taxes, including penalties and interest. You can also be helped if you have unfiled returns, a tax lien, wage garnishment, bank levy, or if you have entered into a payment plan but can't make the payments. Don't make the big mistake in thinking you can ignore or handle your tax problem on your own. You can stop the collection process immediately. Call the Consumer Tax Hotline today for free information at 866-577-4676. That's 866-577-4676.
You heard it pays to donate your car for a nice tax write-off. Please choose your charity well. Since 1983, Cancer Fund of America has helped cancer patients and their families deal with the devastation that is the Big C. Help us fund this vital work, and Cancer Fund will make donating your car extra easy with the fastest free pickup. Then you write it off. Operators are standing by to take your call this very minute at 800-676-2180. Donate boats, trailers, and all vehicles, running or not. Cancer Fund handles DMV, the works. Call now and donate that car. Cancer Fund gets it out of your hair pronto. Call 800-676-2180. That's 800-676-2180. Call now. 800-676-2180. Thank you.
Coming up next week, our big Memorial Day special with special guest Ted Nugent and a lot of rock and roll. Maybe you've seen Jennifer Holland on the Discovery Channel, and maybe because of YouTube, you're seeing more of these videos of animals making friends with other animals that are out of their species, like dogs hanging out with chickens and rabbits making good friends with cats and birds. They're kind of crossing the species line and becoming close friends. With us to talk about this is Jennifer Holland, her new book, Unlikely Friendships. Jennifer, it is great to talk to you. I am doing fine, Jennifer. I love subjects like this. And let me just tell the listeners that Jennifer is the senior writer for National Geographic magazine, and the book we're talking about, Unlikely Friendships, 47 Remarkable Stories from the Animal Kingdom. A great idea for the book. And before we get into some of the specific stories, Jennifer, Talk about how rare this is, or is this something that happens more often than we really realize?
I think that's a good question. I think certainly in captive situations, you're going to see this kind of relationship crop up, especially with people's pets, because they're raised together and they feed together, and so they may kind of find a bond. But in the wild, we really don't know. There are a number of wild stories in the book, but most of the time we're not out there looking, so we don't know what's really going on out there. So perhaps it is more common than we think.
Well, I'll just pick out some of the stories here that we have time to talk about and just give us the detail. Let's start with Finnegan, the tiny squirrel who fell from his nest.
Everyone loves Finnegan. Yeah, a little squirrel, and a woman found the poor little thing at the bottom of a tree and brought it home. And she had a dog at home that was that had just had a litter of puppies and was nursing them. And this dog just sort of took the squirrel in as one of her own and treated it like a puppy, and really sort of helped the squirrel get back on its feet, literally. So just a nice story of the maternal instinct just really kicks in with the dog.
A lot of these stories involve dogs. Dogs are just amazing creatures. Let's spend a little time on dogs in particular, how often they seem to be one of these friends, and what makes them maybe a little different than other social animals.
Yeah, they certainly do seem to have a special kind of social aspect to their personalities. They're most often, I think, the ones here that will kind of fill in for a lost parent. That doesn't seem to be too uncommon. I came across a lot of those stories. So I think that's one of the reasons that we really appreciate them as pets, and vice versa, is that there's a really special thing about them that really we just can completely understand.
Yeah. They're amazing creatures. By the way, this book has lots of pictures, those kind of pictures that just, you say, oh, wow. You just... now,
they're awe pictures.
Talk about, yeah, I know, absolutely. Themba, the young elephant who lost her mother.
This is a really a great one, because you have, this elephant. It starts out kind of sadly because his mother fell off a cliff, unfortunately. But since elephants are so social, the people that were taking care of the elephant realized that you need to put this elephant with some other animal. And sheep are more intelligent than most people give them credit for. They're much more social than we might expect. And in this case, the sheep really sort of saved the baby elephant's life, because it bonded with the elephant, became its partner in life for a time, and was really a very healthy relationship for quite some time. So it's really, really special, I think, between the two of them.
There's the interesting case of a cat, Siamese cat, and baby chicks, and a dog, a happy family. Tell everybody about that.
Very much, yes. The woman that owns these animals she's from Estonia, and she moved to Texas with her husband and brought her love of animals with her, and just she has quite the collection at her home. And this pit bull, Sharky is the name of the dog, is just incredibly social, incredibly loving. Not sort of the typical what people think of when they think of a pit bull. This is probably one of the sweeter dogs out there, and just takes to the cats and the chicks and pigs and whatever else she brings home. Just becomes sort of part of this big happy animal family.
This is a great one. I think I saw part of a documentary on this. It was Coco the gorilla and the kitten, or more than one kitten. Tell everybody about that.
Yeah, this is really a classic story. I think this will be familiar to a lot of people. It's back from the early 80s. This is the gorilla that was taught sign language and became famous for that. But she asked in sign language for a kitten, for a pet. She really wanted a kitten, knew what a kitten was from stories that had been read to her, and she treated the kitten like her own baby, and was very gentle, seemed to know her own strength and to know how to not harm the cat, and had a lovely relationship with the kitten. And later on, other cats were brought to her, and she had similar relationships with them. So really just a very special primate.
Coco was told the stories, and just like bedtime stories about kittens, and that is just amazing.
Yeah, the primates, they really are closely related to us, and you see that in them, often in many of their behaviors.
We're talking about the new book, Unlikely Friendships, 47 Remarkable Stories from the Animal Kingdom. This is this is a leopard that made friends with a cow?
A cow, yeah. This is normally in these rural villages, you might see big cats come in and kill the livestock. That's more typical. But in this village, they saw this leopard coming in night after night and literally cuddling up with a cow that was chained up there. It was a domestic cow. And just this incredibly bizarre sort of relationship that went on for, I want to say it was 2 months. I may not be remembering that correctly. But and eventually the leopard just sort of stopped coming. But it was like some sort of tryst in the night, and they would cuddle up and groom each other, and just, again, something that really makes you sort of wonder what's really going on out there.
Yeah, it's amazing. There was also the lion, a tiger, and a bear that all lived together in close quarters. Talk about it.
This is at a zoo, and they built this facility that could house all three of these animals. And, these are certainly big, charismatic beasts that would normally not encounter one another. They're from different continents. And yet somehow they seem to get along, and they play and live in the same little house. And just, it's very surprising. I can't imagine that first day of putting them together. I think I would have been a little worried. But at Noah's Ark in Georgia, they've done very well together.
I know you have a couple of dogs and a lot of reptiles, I read.
I do, yes.
Home?
My husband is very into snakes, and we have snakes and geckos in addition to dogs running around. So it's an interesting place.
And the dogs don't mind?
They pretty much ignore the snakes. We try to keep them separate. I'm not sure that would be a very fruitful friendship.
I don't think that's worth it. Now, talk about the hippopotamus and the pygmy goat. Did we talk about that one yet? No, I don't think so.
I don't think so. Yeah, that's kind of a funny one too, because I think they sort of the goat was sort of a bad influence, if I remember correctly, on the hippo, and kind of was trying to teach it how to be mischievous. So they had a different kind of friendship, maybe sort of like a big brother and a little brother getting into trouble. But again, clearly a bond that you might not anticipate.
A couple more. The bobcat kitten and the fawn. How did that happen? Again, there's pictures in the book that you have to see that go along with this. But talk about that relationship.
Yeah, this was one, and some of these stories when there's some sort of natural disaster and the animals are sort of left out there. I think it's really particularly heartwarming to see them thrive with companions. And this was a case where there were fires and in California, and these animals were both stray animals that were sort of out there after the fire without their parents. And the wildlife center that took them in was simply short on space, and so they had to pair them up. And it was a very short-lived, they were only together for a short time, but they went right over to each other and cuddled up. And I think that warmth of touch and that comfort that they found in one another was something that kept them both alive before they could be released.
Two other stories I'd like you to talk about. The seeing eye cat and the dog, it was just a blind dog. That was on page 179. That was a great story.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of stories with a blind animal, and that's always really fascinating, because there's more going on there than just kind of buddy up. There seems to be an understanding of the need of the blind animal to be guided around, and that's what this cat did. It guided the dog to the food bowl, and it just kind of stuck around, and it was almost like it was watching out for the dog. And I think that's just a really, really special sort of pairing.
And then there's the case of the pit bull, the Siamese cat, and the chicks. One happy family.
Yep.
Unbelievable. Well, listen, I know we're out of time. This is a great book, especially this time of the year. I love talking about animals, unlikely friendships, 47 remarkable stories from the animal kingdom. And Jennifer S. Holland, thanks for being on the Allan Handelman Show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Stay tuned for more of The Allan Handelman Show.
It's Allan for the C. Crane Company. I want to tell you more about the CC Gozo radio, one of the many new radios, brand new to the C. Crane Company. A little radio with the actual speaker maybe 3 inches, 4 inches, but you won't believe the audio. It's better than some of those big 8-inch and even 10-inch speakers. You have to hear it to believe it. It is amazing. It's the, as I said, the Gozo radio, one of the many exciting products on the C. Crane Company. So look at, by the way, I'm going to give you a website. I'm going to give you a phone number, how to order the radio, get a special price, but you can call this number just to get a free catalog. It's one of those catalogs you're going to want to read every word. All kinds of great, useful gadgets, especially around audio and radio, AM, FM, shortwave, Wi-Fi amplifiers, FM transmitters, that really have broadcast quality. Now, the CC Gozo radio, $99 is a special price. To get that special price, by the way, it has an input for your MP3 players. You could actually stick a mic in it and use it as a PA. It is that good. It's not designed for that, but that's how good the quality is. See it for yourself. Go to their website or call this number, 800-522-8863. 800-522-8863. Again, 800-522-8863. It's the C. Crane CC Gozo radio. You use this code, Allan, ALLAN, and you get a special price, only $99.95 for this radio. And use my code even if you're just ordering a free catalog. Again, here's the number, 800-522-8863. Or go to their website. You can order the catalog or order the radio, ccradio.com. ccradio.com.